So my name's Tom Aldous. What I'm going to talk about is a project that we're running at the GSA currently today. So I'm not sure how many people currently have to deal with custom XML structure and maybe having to compare that structure against their source content and then being able to make changes and work with that. I've found that, DITA as an enabling architecture is really, really good when it comes to be able to transform to it and then compare the DITA content. So that's what this use case is about. So my name again is Tom Aldous. I'm the founder and CEO of the Content Era. I've been around the industry for a while. Some of you guys know me if you might have dealt with me while I was the president of Integrated Technologies. Did that for about 25 years. My brother and I, we decided that we wanted to grow a company way back when Sun workstations were just coming around. And my brother had this idea that people would be willing to pay for high quality consulting services. So we did that. And basically we started out in the Unix world and we branched out into SGML as our customers dragged us there. Telecoms and the financials downtown in Manhattan. So we got in on it real early, SGML, XML. That worked on some really large projects with power plants, rocket companies, the Delta IV rocket program, lasers, just really some real interesting projects. But after 25 years, I was ready to actually retire. And I got a call from a gentleman who ran the Adobe TechCom group back about 9 years ago. And he asked me, would you be willing to work for Adobe, Tom? Are you bored yet? So I went to go work for Adobe, and I worked for a couple of years over there and had a really good time, got to know a lot of people. And then I was poached by a company called Acquisition.gov. I was the senior VP of global operations for Acquisition.gov. Did that for a couple of years. My contract ended. Decided, well, why don't we start up a consulting company again? We called it the Content Era, and that's where I am today. So one of my clients is the GSA. I've been working with them for about 4 years, sometimes in smaller capacity, sometimes heavier. This last year, we had a very, very large commitment by the GSA, the General Services Administration. If you're not familiar with the GSA, go ahead and Google it. It's okay to Google it. Just stay away from that Eddie Van Halen news. That's devastating. But basically, they are an independent agency, but what they're charged with is being able to manage all the government offices globally, all the transportation and kind of office space. But what I deal with mostly is really the regulations that the GSA has been tasked to provide, and that's regulations on how to acquire maybe goods and services. So that's the FAR, and basically that is a combination of the Defense Department, the NASA, and the GSA. That information is all put together in this document called the FAR. And that's actually managed by the group that I work with at the GSA. That content was originally an unstructured FrameMaker. When I first got together with them, we moved it over to structure and then XML, DITA XML, and then we started enriching that content and cleaning it up. It's been 4 years, so everything is really smooth and really clean right now. But what this story is about, it's about the eCFR, the Electronic Code of Regulations. Every U.S. government agency is responsible for putting out any of their regulatory content. It has to be in electronic format. It can't be just printed. In this electronic format, the nice thing about it is it's compiled throughout the whole government. And what they do is they have a very, very general custom structure because they're working across multiple different groups with different types of content. So they're really generalized. It's really a simplistic structure. But the nice thing about any type of structure, I don't care if it's DITA or if it's a custom structure, as long as it's valid, you can work with it. And that's what we have in this story itself, the eCFR. This is that compiled content. We're going to take a look at it. And I'm not just going to talk about this. As always, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a live demonstration of actually converting this eCFR content from this custom structure to DITA. And then later on, we're going to do a little but basically, what's next, what I'm going to talk about is how they actually get to create the eCFR. There's a little bit of urban legend when it comes to this. Some people say that all the different agencies submit their source content, that Word content, or it could be unstructured frame content. It could be something developed on Notepad, whatever it is, and they pass it over to the group that compiles it and converts it to this custom structure, the eCFR. And then there's a camp that says that everything has been converted, and any changes, they come over in this form called the A mandatory instructions. And that's a change to the regulation. It's a legal requirement to have this thing changed. And it's edited with this custom structure. So it's going to go probably a combination of both of those things, where they're editing this custom structure or maybe they're getting passed. Quite often, a lot of these agencies that I work with, they do pass over Word content, and we convert that to DITA also. But basically, having this content in this structured XML format, it gives us the ability to do a whole lot more with it. Because when you're in an unstructured environment, be it unstructured FrameMaker or unstructured Word or unstructured anything, there's the user, it's more relied on training, setting up proper templates, making sure that they don't do overrides, things like that. You can get around it. If you ever looked at the videos I produced when I was with Adobe, you certainly can mark and actually add metadata around those overrides. But it's a whole lot cleaner if I had XML that's valid and start from that position. And we use XSL to be able to do these transforms. And it's extremely powerful to be able to create your own XSL. It's not a hard thing to do. And once you master it, you can pretty much do anything that you would like with this with XML content. You can go XML to XML transformations. You can go XML to different output formats. If you're familiar with the open source toolkit, that's exactly what that is. It's an XML to XML transform for the most part. So you're talking going to XHTML or going to an PDF is really creating an FOP object that gets converted. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at getting this really well structured, but generally structured content and converting over to DITA. And I'll tell you the use case behind it. But for those of you who are interested in seeing the scope, we're talking hundreds of thousands of pages of regulations. Just think about the US government and every regulation that's out there. Feel free to go out. You can Google eCFR, .gov. You'll get to this. You can open it yourself. We'll get to it, and we're going to go into it during the demonstration. But basically, it's broken down into 50 different titles, and each title is a grouping of regulations. So the group that I work with, the GSA, we deal with Title 48. So I'm going to bring you into Title 48, and I'll show you all the other agencies that work within Title 48. We're going to convert that content demonstration at the end. So basically, to ensure that there's a site-wide general look and feel across all of the GSA's Acquisition.gov website, what needed to happen is if you looked at Title 48, most of those departments and their regulations, what they do is they try to house it right in Acquisition.gov. So the best way to do that is to actually do a conversion of that eCFR content, convert it to DITA, output it to HTML or any other format. It also, this DITA content can actually be an edited document, and you can create pristine PDFs. I'll show you the demo on how that works. These are some of the regulations that are housed on Acquisition.gov, and you'll see them in Title 48. Some of it is even from the Air Force or the Army or the, of course, the Defense Department. So it's not just all Title 48, but a lot of it is. Acquisition.gov, the website that as it's designed now, everything has been converted to DITA from a regulatory standpoint. Everything about this DITA has been enriched with metadata that gives it the ability to be able to, do searches and pull out and find commonalities. Really, the goal ultimately is to be able to have contract writing systems to be able to interface with the content. That's where we're moving with this, but we also want to make sure that it's legal. What's up on Acquisition.gov is the legal regulation. Well, the eCFR is the legal document. It's simplistic in its design structure. Layout is generic. What the GSA and Acquisition.gov wanted to do was to take the content, the legal required content, and enrich it and add more value. And to do that, they had to convert over to DITA. We added the metadata. Sometimes the metadata was added manually, but most often you can use XSLT to be able to comb through the content, look at the structure. You can even do string searches against the actual text to add metadata to it that can later be used for publishing and actually extraction. So that is what we're doing. Ultimately, this is what the Acquisition.gov looks like currently today. All the regulations, you can go there, you can download the DITA content that we put up for maybe the FAR. So if you go over to Acquisition.gov, you can go to the FAR browsing, take a look, you'll see XML. When you click on the XML, you'll be presented the whole FAR in its DITA format. Also the output formats, and we provide output formats, and this is all done with a DITA open source toolkit run through FrameMaker currently. So we publish and we put up the HTML, the PDF, docx, EPUB. We also provide the Kindle format. So all of that is also broken down by topic type, and we provide the HTML and the XML directly for each topic if you wanted to, at least drilling down to the part and the subpart. But if you know where to look, you can get down even deeper. So that being the case, we've got the legal content that's the eCFR, it's in a custom structure. We have the GSA's Acquisition.gov, it's in DITA format. Well, we have to do that compare. We got to make sure that the GSA's DITA content is legal and is correct. There's going to be contractors, contract officers that are going to be looking to the GSA's DITA content as it's presented on the website, and they're going to be adding information to contracts. We want to make sure that it's legal. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a compare of this custom XML structure to our DITA structure, but the same exact content, and be able to see the difference. That's what I'll be demoing for you. So the eCFR, it may be the legal document, but it really doesn't have any really useful metadata. It's really simplistic. I'm going to give you a poke at it so you can see it. Comparing the content, I stressed how important it is, but the bottom line is when there is a difference, what happens is analysts are presented the differences within the two, and then they resolve, is it a problem on the eCFR side? Is it a problem on the Acquisition.gov side? But they needed an environment to do that. So part of this process, after we do the conversion of the eCFR to DITA, what we do is we publish it. We can publish it out to all the different formats, but the one for this compare is the HTML. So what we do is we publish the DITA content using the exact same DITA open source toolkit plugin. And then we load it up into a system, and then we have a compare system that I can show you also given time. But basically what it looks like here is once we decide we're going to actually do a compare, we decide which one it is. In this case, it's part 3. Basically, we have color-coded, what's an eCFR content, what's the FAR DITA content. If there's any differences, they're color-coded. Take a look. It's easy for the analyst to be able to identify. Plus, it's a collaborative environment where they can actually tag each other and create notes. So we transfer the eCFR to HTML. We transfer the Acquisition.gov FAR to HTML. We structure it, we bring it into Acquisition.gov, but we also do the compare. As I said, the GSA, they currently use FrameMaker to edit their content because FrameMaker handles DITA extremely well and it's very flexible. And with the WYSIWYG front end, it made them very comfortable to move from unstructured FrameMaker to DITA XML and FrameMaker. The transition was exactly almost 100% exact, so it was an easy thing to learn and to be able to pick up DITA skills. So, we were involved in creating that. We created the templates and the EDD and the read-write rules and XSL because we do that on open and on save. We customized, we specialized DITA for this implementation. So we have 3 specialized topics. We implemented that, brought the open source toolkit. We created a custom menu within FrameMaker so they could actually process and edit right in that environment. And we're able to preserve all of the style tags when we first converted it over. And then later on, the style tags were not important. Basically, the style tags guaranteed that we had exactly the same output, and it had to be exact. It couldn't be different. It has to, considering that it's talking about legal content, there could not be a missing character, and the presentation itself could not be different. So keeping the mapping styles were important, but it gave us time to transition to super clean DITA while still maintaining that type of interface. So this is an example of the eCFR converted, brought up into FrameMaker. I have to tell you, if you haven't used FrameMaker 2020 yet, if you deal with long documents or long DITA maps, this particular document, the FAR, has about 3,800 topics, and it's about a little over 1,800 pages. Opening it up in Frame 2019, it worked, but when I do the same thing in Frame 2020, it's very fast and very responsive. So if you do deal in those long documents and you are currently a Frame 2019 user, go ahead and do the upgrade. It took me no time to add our plugins, and it just physically worked. There's no surprises. So go ahead and do that. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually demo you through the process. I think that's going to be the best way for you to be able to really get your arms around it, and then we can have a question and answer period. So if we were to go to the eCFR, and I'm going to pull up eCFR. So if you wanted to get to it, you could do it too, eCFR. Here we go. Here's that site that you saw on my PowerPoint presentation. And there's 50 different titles, and they're all labels. So here's food and drug. Here's the regulations for all the food and drug in the U.S. government. Homeland Security, federal elections. Are you interested in that? Good timing for it. Here's the regulations for it. You can pull it down. If you wanted to pull it down, this is the XML representation that you can just pull down. And that will be that custom structure that I'm about to show you. Or you can see the HTML by drilling in. But let's go take a look at what we're going to be working with. It's going to be Title 48. So if we go to Title 48, you'll see all the different departments and groups within this. And this is the content that gets housed in Acquisition.gov on top of the Army, of course, other entities that said, hey, I like what you're doing. Can you house my content? Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It's all on this file that I'm about to download. And the file is absolutely huge. So you can come in and you can actually just grab it right here. Select Title 48. It comes with the graphics that are associated with all of this. So you can just go ahead and you can just save the link and you can put it somewhere. I'll put it on my desktop. and you want to grab the graphics. To save time, because this does take a little bit of time, what I did was I've set up this right here. And basically, what we have is eCFR right here. If we were to open it up and take a look what this custom structure looks like, you'll notice there's absolutely no DTD. It's got the content, but it's very generic in the way that it's laid out, which is good and it's bad. Well, we can process this custom structure, and we process that with XSL, so master those skills. I did a 5-part XSL training class while I was with Adobe. I believe it's still available. Go ahead and Google that. So basically 5-part XSL, Aldous, Adobe will get you there. So you can learn to skill up on that just with that video alone. Feel free to reach out if you want to have better instruction than that itself. But what we have to do is we have to transform this. This isn't enough. We need to make it, we have to add a DTD to it. And what we need to do is we need to be able to have something that would be considered a unique ID. This ID right here is not a valid ID. So you can do some processing. I can actually run through this document, process, and create this ID while slamming in the DTD. To do that, it's just a quick little style sheet that I run right here. That's done, and it just created this. You can see the timestamp. If you open it up, you'll see that I just dropped in the DTD, and I resolved out these unique ID, and that's enough to start to work with. So what I normally do in this process is I'll run this right here, which will run a series of XSLs for processing, and they're staged. That takes about a good 10 to 15 minutes. And when you're presenting that, so what I did was I pre-processed that portion until we got to here, and then we can run it again. So this is actually done with that pre-processing I was telling you about, reaching into the content, adding additional information. And if you see, we definitely have the unique IDs set, but then we enriched it with other information about what this is. Is this a list item? You know, what level is this? Is there a run-in? Are they including multiple lists in the same line? This information is used in the next stage to be able to create the DITA content. So we do a little bit of pre-processing. Next thing I do is I just run this right here, and I'm going to do it. It's just this last stage. If you notice, there's no DITA content in here. This is where I take the custom XML structure and we convert it to DITA. So this is a very quick process. Done. And if you were to take a look, before we take a look at anything else, let's take a look and see. We're talking about 92,000 lines of code, and the first one that it did was 273. So what I did was I did add the DTD, I did add the unique ID, but then what I did was I just cut off the FAR portion because there's multiple different regulations, and that's how we got to this. So it's only 92,000 lines. So we just processed 92,000 lines, and we created a bunch of DITA content with DITA maps, and here's a DITA map, and basically, if you take a look, the FAR is a little unique when it comes to the eCFR. The FAR is actually made up of 2 separate volumes. I haven't seen another one in the eCFR that does this, but we combine 2 different volumes to create the actual regulation. So we combine that. So what we want to do is we want to process this even further because I want to add more intelligence. And to add more intelligence is we have text cross-references. It's like see more information. Well, I want to create real XREFs, DITA XREFs and cross-references. I also want to be able to add additional information like every part, they have parts that are considered chapters. I want to add a table of contents that's built in and baked into the DITA content because of their particular needs. So what we're going to do is we're going to run just a series of XSLs to be able to create and modify the content. So it gets transformed. So here's the all-in-one conversion. It's going to convert all this content. And it's enriching this content, looking for the text within all of those lines of code. It's looking for text. It's looking to see what would be a cross-reference. It's looking up where does this information reside. It's creating the link. It's creating the format to that link. So the open source toolkit can make it all work. So this is all being done at the same time. We're looking and building the table of contents and adding additional metadata that's used especially for the PDF when we generate the PDF. So now we've got the same exact content, but what we do is we have it enriched. So let's open it up in FrameMaker. And right now, the GSA has two people primarily handling all the regs, and they're using FrameMaker to do that. So I told you the physical size of the FAR. You just saw it open up this, and we're talking 800 topics. So basically, it's just a matter of double-clicking. The first time I open it, I'm running XSLT on open and on save. So it's just going to use the process loading up the processor the first time. After that, it just will edit and have no issue with itself. So we'll bring it in. We can edit our content in here with FrameMaker. We have some additional tools that we may want to run along with changing the content. Here's our cross-references. We created a tool set. When you're talking about just a topic, there's additional tools for adding information, like change information, because we want to dynamically create a list of affected pages that has hyperlinks to where the change is and that type of thing. The menu dynamically changes when you get into a DITA map, and we can call out the open source toolkit plugins. There's a way of doing it within FrameMaker to be able to do that. It's a whole lot easier for the users to just come in here to do this. Doc update, does processing and make sure the content is exactly right for conversion. We also have things like build LSA table as part of the doc update process, but you may want to just build this table that tells us where all the changes are. So these things were all built within Frame, and Frame made it easy to use. Well, if we wanted to, we could actually publish here. So why don't we just publish this HTML right here. Now, when I do that, let's go take a look. It's actually dropping it in here. And this is where it's going to actually be dropped in. Since it's the open source toolkit, I could actually just do it right from the command line if I chose to. So that's what I like about FrameMaker, right? FrameMaker feels, the reason why I really enjoyed working for Adobe when I did have that time, that 2-year window where I got to be the evangelist and then be a director there, is phenomenal because we understood the strength of Frame and its use with DITA. Well, DITA is a standard. You can use anything that you want. You could use FrameMaker. There's other XML editors out there. There's XML editors that are great for XSL writing, and that you could use Notepad if you understand the standard and you make sure you don't something that's invalid. But what we could do is, you could actually run here and create a PDF if you want. At the end of the day, where it's all getting published is back here. Let's go see if we got it published right here. There's the content that gets loaded into the system as it's stated now. And all of the cross-references, wherever we are, it's going to work nicely and pop over to the right area. So we're good. It gets enriched when it gets dropped into the Acquisition.gov website. But we also have the ability to generate all the other different output formats. This content itself all lives in GitHub. So what we do at the GSA, we load all the DITA content and all the published outputs onto GitHub. And from there, that's how it gets grabbed, processed, and put into Acquisition.gov. So you can actually consider like GitHub almost like the integration between FrameMaker or any other DITA editor that's being used to the Acquisition.gov website. So basically what we do is we upload this content into GitHub. And once it's in GitHub, you're able to do a few things with it. GitHub, the nice thing about it is you can actually wire it directly to your drive letter, and you can actually use FrameMaker seamlessly. It's not a problem. But with GitHub, you can get it also through a web browser. So here's the FAR, and this is what's on Git right now. This is the kind of information that put out. These are the supplemental regs, things that have been converted sometimes from Word, other times straight from the eCFR. Sometimes it's Word to DITA just to produce HTML. DITA, more often than not, is the way to go. The overall drive is to push everything to DITA itself, not have Word itself, and really just edit the environment in a DITA workflow. So if we wanted to, we could take a look. Now that we have this content, we want to take a look at maybe comparing this content to what it looks like in eCFR versus Acquisition.gov's. But before we do that, let's take a look at what a PDF can look like. So this is the eCFR with a very simplistic view, what's out there. Just make it so it's easy to navigate. So this was generated through the open source toolkit from that simplistic XML content, all with XML transforms, create the DITA that makes it so it is navigatable. We have special instructions and headers. All of your cross references are hypertext linked. It's pristine. And we're talking about, in this particular case, almost 1,900 pages. And this is just transformed. Any content in the eCFR can go through this process, convert it to DITA, and use. You can bring it into AEM if you want. You can bring it into any DITA-aware system that you want. So let me show you how that gets used in a compare scenario. So if we come over to here, we can take a look and make sure that we're logged in. Let me just log in real quick. It will pop over. What we're going to do is we're going to go to GitHub. So in GitHub, what we can do is we can do repository compares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look and I'm going to say this eCFR FAR document that we uploaded, the DITA source, the HTML source, all the other outputs, but it's really the HTML source, is listed here. And you can page through, but say we want to do a compare on part 3. What we can do is we can pull it up and we're going to select it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go look at the FAR that's actually the GSA DITA content that you'd pull off of Acquisition.gov, what's been transformed. What we're going to do is we're going to search for part 3 again. Here's part 3. You could do it for any part, of course, and you can do it for not just the FAR, the DFARS, all the different documents. Now, the thing about the eCFR, they use things like smart quotes, just regular dashes, really just simplistic apostrophe, smart apostrophe that's just a straight apostrophe. On the Acquisition.gov side, we use M dashes, we do smart quotes. What we did was we tinkered. We said, hey, listen, why don't we just enrich the eCFR during conversion with that content and then do a compare? Well, basically, the Acquisition.gov uses like case a little differently depending on where you are in the document, right? It uses an M dash depending on where you are in the document. There's rules behind it. So it's a whole lot easier. So why don't we just normalize our DITA content? Why don't we ignore these M dash differences? So there has to be a dash. So we'll do the conversion of an M dash, make it a dash, do the compare. Along with, we'll ignore case sensitivity, unless there's a space or something else involved. And then we'll just create a change set. So basically, here's a change set. You can thumb through. This is what it looks like from an HTML standpoint of what we created and brought into the system. You can scroll through, and there'll be a visual indicator when there's something that might be different, like right here. See that green? Well, that's an indicator. Depending on what repo we select, it will change here. But if we wanted to just see, hey, what does the eCFR look like? Okay, this is what the eCFR looks like. Oh, maybe I want to see what the FAR looks like. Oh, okay, we know that we added quotes that don't exist in the eCFR, and we're missing part. Okay, so maybe we want to add a comment. We can add a comment to this. And we can tag somebody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag Francis. I believe Francis is in the audience today, but Francis, so I can do that. Francis gets keyed with an email. He also, when he comes in, he'll be notified. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to close it out. There's this comment feature. You can select it. It's going to tell you where it's at. You can have a back and forth conversation. Everybody gets notified. And then basically what we'll do is we'll roll down to the point where there's no changes. Everything's perfect. We know they're perfectly legal. So that's how we use the eCFR version process. So just to actually walk you through the basics again. Take the eCFR off of the website. We bring it in. This is it. We could easily just drag the one that we just created. We're going to run the very first process. It's going to add the DTD. It's going to really isolate the FAR, and it's going to enrich it with some things like unique IDs. This is the process that's going to take a while. I'll let it run in the background for you just so you can see it. But basically, it's going to run through these stages, and that's where it comes through and does this. Then finally, what we do is we run another XSL process that creates the DITA content. We enrich that DITA content because we can, now that it's in DITA, we can reach into the XML source, look at the actual textual content using rules within XSL to create the different elements and attributes and metadata that you'd actually find useful. So the whole process can be automated with XSL. So that's what I wanted to present to you today. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to entertain those questions.
Great job, Tom.
Thank you. Hopefully it wasn't too short for you.
Plenty of time for Q&A.
Sure.
Yeah, we still have more than 20 minutes, so we still have some time. Or if you want to show something live in FrameMaker, maybe.
Oh, I can show. I definitely can show FrameMaker. That'd be great. Everybody knows that Frame is the one of my favorite tools. When it comes to editing, that's pretty much what it's about. Let me hide this. But of course, I use all the tool sets, right? So just one way, especially with DITA, it isn't required. So the real question is why? Why would we want to use FrameMaker? Thing that I like about it, let me just kick you through this. Basically, the way that it gets created is you set up these application definitions, and we can open them up, right? I'm telling you, yesterday, I loaded the GSA setup into Frame 2020. It works seamlessly. Even the structured application was developed in 2019. I just dropped it in, and I pointed to it with the maker.ini. I also, with the eCFR, what I did was I actually, because you can, it's easy to be able to configure a custom structure so Frame could work with it. So what I did was I created a quick application so I could take that eCFR content and actually edit it within FrameMaker. So you'll see here, that's what I did. And basically what it looks for is a certain doc type. And if it finds that doc type, it's going to load these templates. And then it's going to look just the way it does when I actually use DITA. The nice thing about DITA, though, is, it's the nice thing about FrameMaker, is you get the ability to run style sheets on open and on save. You know, what that means is, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the DITA content that we leave in the repository, content management system or the file system, is absolutely pristine. And sometimes we need to leave it in a little generalized. But what we can do is on open, the user has no knowledge of it. When we double click, FrameMaker can say, hey, on open, I want to run this particular style sheet. What we do in this particular style sheet, the very first style sheet, is what we do is we hide the auto numbers. For their use case, we had to actually drop the list auto numbers into the content, but we wanted to hide it from the user. So when they added a new list item, it dynamically creates the numbering. But then when we save, it recalculates the number and drops it into the content. So basically, you can actually go over and turn it on and you'll see, well, actually I have that turned off. I didn't test that in 2020. But basically what it is, it's that. And we could open up another document. Why don't I just, actual, just a test to make sure. And I want to grab some content of style. Let's see if we can't get something that's at least got some content in it. We open it up. Look at that. I grabbed something that didn't have a list item. Well, bottom line is you can show hide lists. And that's because of the ability to run style sheets. I literally create a processing instruction and then hide that creates the conditionalized text. So if you're familiar with FrameMaker conditionalization, you can use it in XML and you can use it in ways that the user isn't aware of. So basically you can transform on open and on save. You know what else that means is you can actually have, in theory, custom structure on open converted to DITA and on save back to custom structure if you want, because of those things that Frame allows you to do, which is quite powerful, I have to say. So that's nice. The other thing that I like about FrameMaker, if you take a look at it, look at DITA options, right? Frame allows you to do a lot of things. If you're using conrefs, well, you can decide, well, I want to open it up and I want to have these conrefs live, but it's going to be read-only. I'm going to be able to look at it, but I can't affect the change unless I want to, if I'm a user that wants to. So it's going to be color-coded. You can have that loaded automatically. FrameMaker can resolve xrefs. So like if you have a DITA content and you have cross-references, well, FrameMaker can add value there. Initially, when we first converted the FAR from unstructured FrameMaker to DITA, what we did was we left FrameMaker's xref capabilities to be able to resolve out and create the look and feel depending on the format. So see more information would be like a format that you would have for a cross-reference. FrameMaker can dynamically create that, which is extremely powerful to do. Ultimately, it takes a little bit of time when you talk about very large documents with a lot of xrefs. So what we did was we actually wrote XSLs to do that and get into the content, and that's part of the doc update process. But you have the ability to work within these things. You can transform, if you're familiar with unstructured FrameMaker, tackling structured FrameMaker with DITA content is going to be pretty straightforward. And being able to set up this kind of stuff, it's easily learned. I mean, there's lots of videos out there. Google me and Adobe, you'll find a bunch of them. But basically what you can do, if you're used to using index markers and you know how to create an index at the end of your book, if you want to use FrameMaker to generate your PDF and you don't want to use the open source toolkit, it can use the book route, right? Or and now with the latest version, you can actually use the open source toolkit to generate that. But basically, you can convert your index term elements right to index markers, and you can be very familiar with it. So Frame really tries to be user-friendly, and it makes it real easy for the user. I mean, structure, you can take a look at the structure. You can actually embed the structure by selecting tags on view if you want. You can shut it off. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why the GSA, and I do business with a lot of very large organizations, governmental, industry, if it be an airline, with airline mergers and things like that. I have to say that quite a few of them use FrameMaker for the editing of the XML content, and especially when they're first transitioning to help the users get a look and feel and understand. I mean, if you look at the Adobe model, it's AEM, right? So AEM includes a web browser editor. So once your users are used to using topics and editing in the topic mode, if you wanted to implement something like an AEM, it has a CK editor instance, and it's a browser-based editing environment. So the users can slowly move that environment, and then now they can edit their content, you know, on their iPad or their tablet. So that's extremely powerful as a learning tool and a transformation tool. So those are some of the highlights that I would actually really pull up. Is there anything in particular, Matt or Stefan, that you?
I didn't see any specific questions in the Q&A pod. I know one of the things that we've seen clients doing over the years is having to convert from other standard. And you mentioned a custom XML, which might be a more sophisticated situation. But I know we've talked to clients about converting Microsoft Word over to DITA, taking HTML to DITA. Maybe talk a little bit about how that might be easier than you might expect when you need to convert something like Word with its underlying structure or HTML with its underlying structure.
Absolutely. So basically, I had a conversation just the last couple of days with a client. They do robotics for Amazon warehouses. And basically, what they were looking to do is to convert RoboHelp content to DITA, right? So that's just XHTML content. So basically, I was telling them, I was walking them through it. I said, it's very, very easy. So, you know, I set this up for this particular project also, so I can give you a glimpse of what that looks like. So basically, HTML to DITA, it's just a series of style sheets, right? So the DITA open source toolkit will provide you, if you take a look, there's a pre-processing and conversion from generalized HTML to structured DITA content. The only problem with that is it's generic, very generic. But like I was telling you, once it gets over to DITA content or even any kind of XML content, you can use XSL style sheets to further clean up, get rid of, maybe you want to get rid of headings and the headers of your HTML. Maybe you want to move content around. That's what these style sheets for. And then ultimately what you can do is you can dynamically create a DITA map. The nice thing about RoboHelp is you have the table of contents. That can be converted directly to a DITA map, but you can also take a composite document that might have been converted from HTML, chunk it up into topics and create a DITA map. It doesn't take much. If we were to take a look, right, let's take a look at what that XML content looks like. There you go. So basically, this is how I do it in this particular case for just a composite document that I'm going to chunk up into individual topics, and then I create a data map from it. Look, that's all it takes. It's very straightforward. Looking for topics, creating the IDs and the hrefs, being able to create any type of additional metadata that you want to put into your data maps. Adding this type of content is important for the PDF process, because if you use a PDF open source toolkit plugin, that's where it gets a little more interesting. HTML is really straightforward for publishing. PDF requires just a higher level of precision, because basically when we convert from DITA using the open source toolkit, what you do is you convert not from DITA PDF. It doesn't work that way. You go DITA to FOP objects. So basically what you're doing is you've got yourself, primarily basically an XML language. It's called FOP formatting objects. Mm-hmm. And that gets run through a processor that creates the PDF. So, you can do things like that easy when it comes to converting. When it comes to Word, you may want to do it a couple of different ways, right? You can use docx and use style sheets to convert it. Early on, what I used to do is bring Word documents into FrameMaker, create a conversion table. You're able to structure the unstructured content just like it was unstructured FrameMaker. And then you can use style sheets to enhance it and cut it up and publish it.
Now, for everybody whose eyes just rolled back in their head when you opened up Notepad and showed them like 3,000 lines of code, how did you produce that original XSLT?
Wrote it. There's lots of tools, right? So
yeah, well,
it's not FrameMaker. It's a non Adobe product.
Yeah, but not Notepad.
Well, actually, you can definitely do modifications. A lot of the tools that are out there will help you create the XSL for you. I mean, it's extremely important if you really want to be a DITA expert to learn XSLT. Outsourcing it is a temporary thing, but as soon as you can master XSLT, your company's use case, your agency's use case, and when you can just think and write code like it's sheet music and transform your content, grab content, merge content, that changes the way that your organization is going to interact with your content.
Yeah.
Throughout all that time, that's how long it took for me to pre-process that I skipped. Then it created the DITA content. So that would have been the long process. Questions, comments, suggestions?
There was an interesting question from one of the presenters who is going to present tomorrow, from Patrick Porter from Gulfstream. He will be speaking with Bernard Ashman tomorrow on flight manuals. Gulfstream is an plane company. They're building luxury planes. And he's interested in understanding how the government customers were assured that the converted content retained integrity with the source, because they had an obligation to convince the FAA. So similar thing. Maybe can comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what you do is you have the DITA, you've got the DITA source, right? And then you have what I converted. Now, interesting, for the airline industry, I wrote transforms to convert Airbus's content to DITA. And then we had to do the same type of thing that she's asking. But what we did was we built a little tool at the content era to do that comparison. We bought a comparison tool. So that's what you're looking at here. So basically what we did, and I don't want to get into my tool because it's not important, but basically what it is we load in the DITA content. I actually publish with the same plugin, DITA OT plugin. So now I know that the actual HTML output is exact because the DITA itself is structurally valid. I added all the required metadata exactly the same. And I even, got those links active. But then basically saving to HTML, doing an HTML to HTML compare is the most effective that we found. Because if you do the DITA to DITA, you have attribute changes that pop up. So maybe you populated an attribute in your source content that's really not important. You can always drop it before you do the compare. That's not a problem. You could do something like that with this, as long as you drop everything that's not important compared to what you're comparing against. But we found it easier to actually do the compare on the HTML to HTML. And, just set up a system that makes it visual to be able to do that. And basically what you want to do is have a collaboration. So, if you're interested in something like this, you can feel free to reach out to me, and, we have this compare. Or if you just want to know about it, I'd like to share. So. How's that, Stefan? I didn't want to get too much into what we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely fine. Again, it was really, really amazing again, Tom. Over all the years, you have presented so many use cases, especially with government organizations where DITA and Framework are in use. It's amazing to see that. And I had put this in the chat. It's crazy to see what all you can do with DITA, Framework, and creative people. So tools are one thing, standards are another thing, but having people and partners like you who also have the creativity and visionary ideas to see how a solution could look like and to turn that into results and after all to success, that is the crazy and amazing thing. So when these things come together, then really good, cool stuff comes out of that. And in the end, it's also good for the society, even in this case.
I absolutely appreciate that, Stefan, and I think you're doing an absolutely amazing job. You brought, I think, the Adobe TechCom communication to a whole new level that I could never have done. So I appreciate you getting out there and doing what you're doing for the community too.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Oh, it's my pleasure.